Today we're going to reflect on Jesus' teaching on divorce. So please take out your Bibles and open them to Mark chapter 10, verse 1. In this story, Jesus is approached by Pharisees who attempt to trick him with a question. They ask him, "Is it lawful for a man to dismiss his wife?" By lawful they mean, is it right? Is it okay? In Matthew's account of the same encounter, the question is it all right for a man to dismiss his wife for any reason? Jesus responds, "What does Moses command you?" And they answer, "Moses permits a man to give his wife a letter and to dismiss her." This is the trap. Either Jesus approves of their selfish and unfair practice of casually dismissing their wives, or they will argue he goes against the teaching of Moses. Jesus doesn't fall for the trap. He says to them, "Moses gave you that law because you're selfish and unfair." Instead, he refers them back to the first book of Moses, Genesis, the first book in our Bible. So take your Bibles and open them to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. In there, it states that male and female, he, that's God, made them people. And then Jesus refers them to Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Flip over to that passage. In that passage it says, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, and the two become one body." You see what Jesus is doing? Let's go back to Mark 10, verse 8, where Jesus concludes his argument by saying, "Therefore, men should not break apart what God has joined together." This was a very important teaching for the early church. You can tell this because it's recorded in the first three Gospels. It's even recorded twice in Matthew, and also in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. Further, it's very commonly discussed by the early church fathers. On the other hand, this teaching was contrary to the culture at that time. The majority of the rabbis and the Roman authorities said that it was all right for a man to dismiss his wife for any reason. The Romans allowed a wife to do it as well. This teaching, therefore, was something that set Jesus' followers apart from the surrounding culture. Now, why were Jesus and the early Christians so strict on this teaching? There are two reasons: faithfulness and fairness. Jesus was speaking out of a Jewish tradition that put great stock and great importance on the covenant of marriage between a man and a woman. And it also put great emphasis on being fair to your wife, referred to as the wife of your youth. This tradition struggled with another tradition, that a more selfish and uncaring tradition that gave a husband the right to dismiss his wife and throw her out of the house for any reason. This conflict can be seen in the book of Malachi. Turn to chapter 2 and look at verses 10 through 16. There the prophet spoke out against the accepted practice of dismissing a wife. The Lord, speaking through Malachi, says that dismissing a wife is violent and unfaithful. He says, "The man who hates and divorces his wife does violence to the one whom he should protect." Now, our culture has the same teaching as this selfish culture of the ancient Near East. Our culture teaches that happiness and fulfillment of each individual is the only thing that matters. If someone is unhappy in a marriage, they should freely divorce so that they can become happy. The question becomes, which view of marriage do you accept? The one taught by Jesus and the church, or the one taught by our culture? How important is marriage to you when you look into your future? Do you think that one day you will be willing to form a lifelong commitment with another person? And if you do, will you and that person be willing to open your life up to children? Finally, if you do accept this teaching, how are you going to relate to friends and maybe family members who go through divorces? These are not easy questions, but I leave them to you. Thank you.